No one's ever found an ancient Y chromosome or a very different Y chromosome. Okay, I'm going to save that bit for the next slide. I always try to say this too early. I'm going to save that for a second. I got some more cool stuff to say just about Y chromosomes. Well, it turns out also, I said a second ago, there are 3 main mitochondrial lineages found across the world. Now, there could have been 2 if 2 of those daughters-in-law were sisters. There could have been 1. There could have been more. There could have been 10,000. The Bible's wrong, but there are 3. Those 3 mitochondrial lines, 2 of them are separated by a single mutation. This one's separated from the other 2 by 5 or 6. That gives us a little bit of a window into how much mutation was occurring between creation and the flood. Oh, that's really cool. Today, from these people mutations have occurred in all the lines from these people's descendants, these women's descendants. So today, you and I probably are about 22 mutations apart. Me and someone from Africa or someone from a very different part of the world could be as many as 100 differences. So maybe 100 mutations have occurred in all the generations since the flood.
In that one gene or all genes?
In just the mitochondrial DNA. Good question. Now I'm talking about mutation rates here. Now wait a second. How do you measure mutation rate? Well, there are actually 2 different ways, and they give you vastly different numbers. There's the real way and the artificial way. The real way is to take a genealogy, take an extended family of people. Maybe they have common ancestor 10 generations ago and it's 1,000 people. And take genetic samples from them and just count how many differences they have. When you do that, you get answers like, well, every child born has 100 new mutations. How many people have read John Sanford's book, Genetic Entropy and the Mystery of the Genome? Okay, just as an aside, a whole different talk, we cannot survive 100 mutations per person per generation. We will go extinct, as an aside. But when you measure it, what you get is 100, 200, 300 mutations per child. That is huge. When you do it the other way, the assumption way, you say, well, humans and chimpanzees had a common ancestor 6 million years ago. We are X% difference. X% divided by 6 million gives you a very small number, right? Anything divided by 6 million is going to be a small number. So when the evolutionist looks at mutation rates, well, remember, slow and gradual. They've got to be slow. If mutation rates are high, we go extinct. They've got to be slow, so natural selection has time to get rid of them. The bad ones. But when we actually measure it, when we measure it for real, we get a vastly higher number. Okay, so you've heard that humans and chimpanzees are 99% identical. True? How many people have heard that humans and chimpanzees are 99% identical? Okay. I want to say right now, it's a myth. And I use the word myth because it's been printed in an evolutionary journal. In fact, Science Magazine, top science journal in the world. Now, in 2007, this paper is published called Relative Differences, the Myth of 1%. The author of that paper says that they've known for decades that humans and chimpanzees are much more different than 1%. But the term was convenient. It makes me so angry. You mean you were lying through your teeth, deliberately deceiving people, knowing that you're driving people away from Christianity? With your myth that was convenient? The chimpanzee genome was 12 or 13% larger than the human genome. Do you know that? How can we be 1% different? Well, I guess it all depends on how you count it. Now, most of that difference is in the so-called junk DNA that cuts the telomeres. But that junk DNA has genes in it. And that junk DNA, every single day, in fact, I had an article on creation.com last week talking about another new function found for junk DNA, a very powerful function. Very powerful function. Turns out that we've got nearly 700 genes that chimpanzees don't have. And vice versa. There haven't been enough generations since we split from chimpanzees. If we split 3 million years ago and average human generation time is 30 years, there have only been 100,000 human generations since we split from chimpanzees. That's nothing. If you're familiar with Walter Remind's book, The Biotic Message, and his studies on cost theory, and Haldane's dilemma. That's Haldane's dilemma. Haldane said, there have only been 100,000, 200,000 generations. You can only fix 100,000 or 200,000 different mutations. How can we have 35 million letter differences between us and chimpanzees? Can't do it. That's where junk DNA came from, by the way. They said, oh yeah, but if 98% of the genome is just junk, then natural selection can operate in those 2%. And you can do that in 200,000 generations, and the rest of it, that just changes willy-nilly. It doesn't matter. Natural selection doesn't have to operate on that. Do you see how junk DNA is necessary for evolution to be true? They came up with this mathematical conundrum. They said, oh, well, junk DNA, that's the answer. And okay, it might have been an answer. I never liked it. But every day now, every week, every month, more papers are coming out, more functions for junk DNA. And now what's the answer now? I don't think mathematically evolution is tenable anymore. Also, if you try to line up the human and chimpanzee genome, there's a University of California, Santa Barbara has this genome browser you can go to, and you can say, okay, human versus chimp, and it'll line up the entire genome. And you can just scroll through, see all the genes that they have in common, and it's the same letters for, letter after letter after letter. It's exactly the same. It's amazing. It takes you a while to figure out that there's a color code for the chimpanzee genome, and when you look at it, the human genome will be like blue, and then the chimpanzee will be blue, green, orange, black, brown, blue, 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 and this blue, each one of those blues has a purple in there, and there's an arrow showing the purples are backwards. What that means is what they've done is they've taken the chimpanzee genome and they've scrambled it. They have rearranged it. Each chromosome has its own color in their genome browser. And in order to line up the human and chimpanzee genome, you have to have tens of thousands of rearrangements. Now, wait a minute. Let's say I have a chromosomal rearrangement that occurs in me, a brand new mutation, makes me tall and handsome. How long would it take for that mutation to spread out amongst the entire human gene pool? It'll never happen. But mathematically speaking, it is possible. These tens of thousands of rearrangements have to happen within only 1 to 200,000 generations. There's not enough time. There's not enough time for that, or to fix the 35 million base pair differences, or to evolve 700 new genes. So much